Lewis Hamilton crossed the finish line at Zandvoort on August 23, 2026, and immediately made his frustration known over the radio. The seven-time world champion finished the 2026 Dutch Grand Prix in P4, less than 1 second behind George Russell in P3. His teammate, Charles Leclerc, trailed in P5, half a second further back. Hamilton told his race engineer that the team's tactics, not misfortune, had cost him the final podium spot. He said on team radio, "We weren't unlucky." He added that time lost earlier in the race had cost the team P3, and that the matter would need to be discussed away from the cameras. A golden podium chance had been within reach, and it slipped away because of a Ferrari strategy call that never quite landed. The race itself ran across 72 laps and marked the final scheduled appearance of the Zandvoort circuit on the Formula One calendar, with an attendance figure of roughly 325,000 fans across the weekend. At the front, Lando Norris won for the second consecutive race after his earlier victory in Budapest, crossing the line 11.536 seconds ahead of Antonelli, who held on for second. Russell completed the podium in third. Leclerc set the fastest lap of the race on lap 60, recording a time of 1 minute and 14.230 seconds at an average speed of 206.552 km/h, evidence that the Ferrari had genuine pace even without the result to show for it.to understand why this result carried weight. The championship picture must be considered first. After Zandvoort, Kimi Antonelli led the drivers' standings with 242 points. Behind him, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton were tied on 183 points apiece, with Russell classified ahead on countback due to having 2 race wins compared to Hamilton's 1. Lando Norris moved up to 4th with 159 points, overtaking Leclerc in the process. Leclerc dropped to 5th in the standings, sitting 28 points behind Hamilton. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes extended its lead over Ferrari to 87 points. With the season heading to Monza from September 4th to 6th, every point mattered, and a missed podium at Zandvoort was not an isolated slip. It was part of a pattern that Ferrari could not afford to repeat at its home race. The weekend's problems started on Saturday. Leclerc qualified 6th for the Grand Prix, despite the Ferrari showing race pace potential that suggested a higher grid slot was possible. Team principal Fred Vasseur later admitted that starting 5th and 6th already compromised the situation, noting that in sprint qualifying the top 4 cars had been separated by only a few hundredths of a second. He said, "The situation is already compromised." Hamilton lined up 5th. At the start, both Ferraris moved side by side and Leclerc briefly gained a position. Then Max Verstappen crashed heavily at his home race, triggering a red flag. At the restart, Leclerc lost the ground he had gained, with Oscar Piastri reclaiming the position from him, leaving both Ferrari drivers spending much of the early race in traffic. The red flag scrambled the strategy picture for every team on the grid. Every car was bunched together for a standing restart, and Norris lost the lead to Antonelli at that restart before recovering it later in the race. Once the race resumed, Ferrari eventually split its approach between the 2 cars. Leclerc ran a soft to medium to hard tire sequence, pitting for the first time and later switching from medium to hard tires. Hamilton, on the other hand, went directly from soft tires onto hards and extended that stint, a decision that gave him the option of potentially reaching the finish without a further stop. The problem was that part of that long stint was spent stuck behind Leclerc, who was running on tires that were, by comparison, several laps older. This tire offset created the exact situation that would define the middle of the race. This second stint battle began after Hamilton passed Oscar Piastri for fifth place. Around lap 42, Hamilton caught up to Leclerc and radioed his engineer, Carlos Santi, with a direct message: "I'm quicker than Charles. Tires are better." The team acknowledged the message, but no order was given to swap the cars. Instead, Ferrari called Leclerc to pit. Leclerc, focused on his own race and reportedly not informed that he was meant to let Hamilton by, did not comply immediately, and mechanics who had come out to the pit box saw him continue on for another lap. Hamilton's frustration built quickly. He said over the radio, "We're just losing time." Leclerc's second pit stop finally happened on lap 43, and by some reports the stop itself was slow, running to 3.4 seconds. Once Leclerc had pitted and Hamilton was released into clear air, Hamilton responded with a sarcastic message to his crew: "A great way of wasting time, guys. Good job." Norris, Antonelli, and Russell all extended their advantage during this period, since none of them were losing time in traffic behind a teammate. Being freed from behind Leclerc did not solve Hamilton's problem, because he was still running on aging hard tires while the cars ahead extended their advantage. For a period during the race, Hamilton found himself running at the front of the field simply because rivals ahead had not yet made their final stops, effectively putting him in the lead on strategy rather than outright pace. He later admitted that seeing faster cars closing in from behind while he led made him question whether he could hold the position at all. Lando Norris, Kimi Antonelli, and George Russell all pulled away during the period Hamilton spent stuck in traffic. Ferrari's own estimates later suggested Hamilton was losing time at a rate of around 2 seconds a lap on the worn compound before a late intervention changed his fortunes. At one stage, the pit wall asked Hamilton for his own input on how long he should stay out on the aging tires. His response, delivered with visible frustration, became one of the defining lines of the weekend: "Are you using me as a guinea pig or what? What's going on? How long will you have me stay out?" That message captured the tension of a driver who felt the team's indecision, rather than the car's pace, was working against him. Leclerc offered his own explanation once the race had finished. He said he preferred to stay out longer on his tires in order to build a fresher tire advantage for the closing laps against Mercedes, and that this preference had initially been accepted by the pit wall before being reversed. He explained that he had a very good first stint and had to stop early to try and undercut on the cars ahead, calling it part of the team game and something that carries risk. His real point of frustration, however, was aimed elsewhere. Leclerc explained that he had been pushing to undercut Russell in the opening stint, only for Russell to pit early anyway, meaning Leclerc emerged from his own stop right behind the Mercedes regardless of the sacrifice. He also questioned why he was called in only 2 laps after Russell during the second stop rather than being allowed to extend his stint for a tire life advantage late in the race. Vasseur later confirmed that the team deliberately avoided explaining the strategy to Hamilton over the radio in real time, saying, "We didn't want to disclose it to the competitors." He added that Charles was supposed to pit, the stop was extended by a lap, and it amounted to a kind of confusion, all while Leclerc's preference to stay out was still being negotiated internally on the pit wall. Vasseur separately noted that Leclerc had also been frustrated at one stage about which tire compound to use, adding that everybody on the pit wall found it difficult to build a clear picture of the correct